Have you ever felt an overwhelming sense of emptiness after what seemed like a profound spiritual awakening? No drive, no goals, no motivation. You're not lazy. You've simply lost something you didn't even realize was driving you. Carl Jung, one of the greatest minds in psychology, called it the death of the ego. And in this video, we'll uncover why your drive vanishes and what you can do about it. When we talk about motivation, we often assume it's something natural, something that just exists within us, pushing us toward goals, achievements, and success. But Carl Jung, the Swiss psychiatrist and founder of analytical psychology, believed that much of what drives us in daily life doesn't come from our deepest self. It comes from the ego. So what exactly is the ego? To Jung, the ego is your conscious mind, the part of you that says, I am. It's the identity you've constructed over years of conditioning. Your name, your career, your preferences, your memories. It gives you a sense of control, direction, and importance in the world. It's the voice that says, I must succeed. I must be better. I must prove myself. And in many ways, the ego is necessary. Without it, we wouldn't survive in society. It's what helps us set goals, compete, build careers, and navigate relationships. It provides us with a structure, a personal narrative that makes sense of our place in the world. But here's the catch. The ego isn't the whole story. According to Jung, the ego is just a small island in the vast ocean of the psyche. Beneath the surface lies something much deeper, what he called the self. The self is the totality of who you are, conscious and unconscious, light and shadow, ego and soul. While the ego is focused on how we appear to the outside world, the self is concerned with who we truly are, beneath all roles and masks. When you begin to awaken spiritually, this deeper part of you starts to stir. You begin to question your motivations, your desires, your identity. The things you used to chase no longer excite you. The roles you used to play start to feel fake. And this is when the ego begins to lose its grip. You might feel like you're losing your drive, your ambition, your purpose. But in truth, what you're losing is the ego's version of those things. You're not lazy, you're not broken, you're simply waking up to the realization that your previous motivations weren't truly yours. The ego was never meant to be in charge of your soul. It was meant to serve, not lead. In Jung's words, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. That journey starts by seeing the ego for what it is, a helpful tool, but not the master of your life. As we move forward, we'll look at what happens when the ego begins to dissolve completely, a process known as ego death, and why this can leave you feeling lost, aimless, and stripped of all motivation. But remember, this is not the end. It's the beginning of something far deeper and far more real. The moment you begin to question everything you once believed, your goals, your dreams, even your identity, you enter a phase Carl Jung described as ego death. It sounds dramatic, and it is, but it's also an essential step in true inner transformation. Ego death is not the literal end of your mind. It's the symbolic unraveling of the false self, the persona you've worn like armor your entire life. For some, this happens gradually. For others, it strikes like lightning, a sudden awakening that leaves your inner world in pieces. You no longer feel connected to your job. Your social status feels meaningless. The ambitions that once lit a fire in your heart, they vanish. This is terrifying, and yet, it is deeply necessary. The ego was never your enemy. It simply built a version of you based on survival and external validation. But spiritual awakening doesn't care about who you pretend to be. It strips you of all illusions and demands authenticity. Jung observed that the ego can't hold the weight of the full psyche. When we try to live only through the ego, we ignore the vast unconscious forces within us. The shadow, the anima, the archetypes, all parts of the self that yearn to be seen and integrated. When the ego dies, what emerges is silence. Not peace, not yet, but a void. A space where everything familiar dissolves and nothing new has yet formed. This is the dark night of the soul that mystics have described for centuries. You feel disconnected from your old life, but not yet connected to your deeper truth. You float between worlds, uncertain, fragile, and often depressed. But this depression isn't clinical, it's existential. It's the grief of letting go of a life built on illusions. Jung likened this stage to alchemy, the ancient art of transformation. Before lead can become gold, it must be broken down, purified, and reformed. The ego death is this breakdown. It's uncomfortable, it's disorienting, but it's also the doorway to the self. In his words, there is no coming to consciousness without pain. If you're going through this, you might feel like you've lost your sense of direction. But what's really happening is the falling away of ego-based desires, the constant push to achieve, to compete, to be someone. All of that was the ego's narrative. Now the soul is stirring. This moment of death is also a moment of potential. Something far more enduring, something real, is beginning to emerge. Not driven by fear, not built on lies, but rooted in inner truth. Stay with this process. Don't rush to rebuild. Let what's false fall away, because only after the ego dies can your true self begin to live. You wake up one day, and the fire that once burned so brightly is gone. The drive to push, to prove, to climb, it just isn't there anymore. Even simple tasks can feel pointless. You may find yourself asking, what's the point of anything now? This phase can be deeply confusing. But according to Carl Jung, what you're experiencing isn't failure. It's transition. You see, most of our motivation before awakening is powered by the ego. It whispers things like, you need to be successful. You need to be admired. You must achieve more to be worthy. These motivations aren't necessarily wrong, but they are externalized. They are based on who you think you should be, not who you truly are. When the ego begins to dissolve, the fuel that once drove you dries up. You no longer crave validation. You no longer seek approval. You no longer need to be someone in the eyes of the world. And in the absence of those cravings, what remains? Stillness, emptiness, sometimes even apathy. This is what Jung referred to as the withdrawal of projections. You're no longer projecting meaning onto things that never truly held it. Status, money, reputation. You're no longer trying to meet standards imposed by society or by your childhood conditioning. In a way, you're detoxing from a lifetime of psychological addiction. An addiction to becoming, achieving, proving. The disappearance of motivation is not a sign of spiritual failure. It's a sign that the old engine is no longer working, and the new engine hasn't yet started. It's important to understand this. You're not supposed to feel inspired during this stage. You're not supposed to feel ambitious or productive. You are, quite literally, in between identities, and the motivation that will eventually return will not be the same. Jung believed that true energy, real psychic energy, flows from the self, not the ego. The self doesn't chase, it expresses, it creates, It lives in alignment with meaning, not momentum. And that shift takes time. In the modern world, we're conditioned to equate motivation with movement, results, and success. But after awakening, the absence of motivation is often a deep inner call to stop, to listen, and to be. It's a sacred pause, not a dead end, but a doorway. During this phase, many people rediscover forgotten passions. They begin to paint, write, meditate, spend time in nature. These aren't ego-driven activities. They arise naturally as expressions of the soul, and that's the key. When motivation returns, it will feel different. It won't come from lack or fear or comparison. It will come from stillness, from truth, from within. So if you feel lost, unmotivated, or empty, breathe. You haven't failed. You've simply outgrown the ego's fuel, and your soul is just beginning to stir. Now that we've explored the ego, its death, and the disappearance of motivation, the question becomes, what now? Carl Jung believed that the ultimate goal of psychological and spiritual development is not to reject the ego, but to integrate it. Integration is the path where your ego and your deeper self begin to work together, rather than fight for control. You don't need to destroy the ego completely. That's not the point. The ego is not the enemy. It becomes a problem only when it rules over your life, pretending to be your true identity. Jung once said, "You should not identify with the ego, but you also should not destroy it. You must relate to it." Integration begins when you stop trying to return to your old self, the one driven by fear, ambition, or comparison, and start listening to what's real inside you. This is the beginning of what Jung called individuation, the process of becoming whole. During individuation, you learn to balance the outer world with the inner one. You recognize your shadow, the parts of yourself you've rejected or denied, and you bring them into awareness. You acknowledge your inner child, your wounds, your fears, your dreams. You stop performing and start becoming. It's not flashy, it's not always exciting, but it's deeply authentic. And here's the miracle. Motivation returns. But this time, it's not about climbing ladders or chasing status. It's about service, creativity, and truth. You feel a pull toward things that nourish the soul. You're drawn to simplicity, to connection, to depth. You no longer ask, "How can I prove myself?" But instead, "What is life asking of me?" Your actions arise not from anxiety, but from alignment, not from pressure, but from peace. This is the mature soul, the one who has passed through ego death and emerged on the other side, not as a hollow shell, but as an integrated being. The ego is still there, but it bows to something higher, the self. And here, motivation isn't loud. It doesn't roar, it whispers, it nudges, it guides. You begin to live not for outcomes, but for meaning. You may feel called to teach, to heal, to create art, to build something that reflects your inner truth. Not because you need to be seen, but because your soul needs to express. In Jung's words, your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakens. Integration is awakening in motion. It's where the spiritual meets the practical, where purpose replaces performance, and where life becomes not a chase but a calling. If you're still watching this video, there's something inside you that knows. Something deeper is unfolding, something real. You've lost motivation, the old fuel is gone, and you've walked through confusion, doubt, even fear. But here's the truth Jung discovered, and what countless seekers have affirmed over centuries. This is not a breakdown, it's a breakthrough. You are not lazy, you are not failing, You are simply done playing a game that was never yours to begin with. The ambitions that once felt exciting now feel empty, not because you're broken, but because you're awakening. You're stepping into alignment with the self, the soul, the true core of your being. And that shift doesn't come with loud celebrations or instant clarity. It comes quietly. It comes with silence, with stillness, with letting go. Jung called this the process of becoming whole, a return to center, a homecoming to the parts of yourself you forgot or buried. And it's from this place, this still point, that true motivation is born. Not the motivation of hustle or fear or validation, but the motivation that flows from your essence, a natural, effortless urge to create, connect, and contribute. To live life not as a performance, but as a prayer. You might not have all the answers right now. That's okay. You might not feel like doing anything. That's okay, too. This is the sacred pause, the winter before spring, the breath before rebirth. Let it happen. Jung once said, the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. And yet that's exactly what this journey is about. Accepting all of it, the ego, the pain, the emptiness, the beauty. Not to fix yourself, but to meet yourself. So if you're feeling lost, good. That means the old map no longer works, and a new one that you draw yourself, is beginning to form. Walk slowly. Be kind to yourself. Let go of timelines, of pressure, of needing to get back to normal. Because what's coming isn't normal. It's true, and it's yours. Let the stillness guide you. Let your inner voice become louder than the noise outside. And when you're ready, not because someone told you to be, but because your soul begins to stir, move, create, live. Not for approval, not for performance, but for presence. You are not behind. You are not failing. You are awakening. And the world doesn't need more motivated performers. It needs more awakened souls. If this message resonated with you, like, subscribe, and share this video. Comment below. What has your awakening journey been like? And remember, the soul has no deadline. Keep walking your path.